Hello and welcome to this What's New video for the ScanCAD software release 8.85. We're very excited to share a new software release with you. We have a number of major enhancements that we are excited to announce. This video will cover the more major ones, but remember to check the release notes for all of the different minor enhancements that are included in the release, because we have been hard at work over the past year or so. We're going to divide this video up into a couple sections. The first section is just going to be a general enhancement that we're going to talk about, and this applies to both the inspection and the reverse engineering specific applications. Those would be, of course, Scan Inspect, Scan Stencil, Scan Inspect VPI for inspection, Scan Fab, Scan T, and Super T for reverse engineering. So the first section is going to be general, covering both those application-specific areas. The second section we'll cover is the enhancements in the inspection application area. And then the third section we'll cover is enhancements in the reverse engineering area. And again, these are just the major enhancements. Everything is in the release notes. We're just going to hit the highlights on this video. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and dive into the general enhancement. And let me close that. That is going to be our new navigator window, which you just got a little sneak peek of. That navigator window can be opened with this nav button down at the lower right corner. And when you click on it, you're going to see a navigator in the upper left. So what this does is this actually is going to show us the whole layer. So even if I zoom in on my main screen, you'll see that I'm still seeing the whole layer over here in the navigator, with a small little white outline showing me where my screen is focused in the context of the whole layer. Now, you can move this anywhere. So generally speaking, I like to stick it over there. You can also stick it on an alternative monitor if you have multiple monitors. Additionally, you can change the size. You can't drag the size here. You actually have to go into Check, Display Mode, and you've got two different navigator functions we'll talk about. The first one, of course, is the size, which will go navigator size. And I like small because I like to have it in the same window, so I'll do small. Click OK, and you can see I've got my navigator right there, nice and small. So that's sort of out of my way, but it's still right in my field of view. Again, if I quit out, re-enter, you'll see the navigator stays where it was earlier. Same thing if I quit the software and reopen it. And again, that works if it's on a different monitor, etc. The next function I do want to cover is if for some reason this gets lost. Let's say you stick it on another monitor and then you unplug that monitor and you can't find it anymore. You can always just go to Check, Display Mode, and Reset Navigator Position. And bam, that'll bring it back up to the upper right corner, and then you can get things situated from there. So that's our navigator. Again, we're very excited about that. We feel like that really gives us some good context when we're working on a job. Again, whether we're working in inspection or reverse engineering areas, having that context of the overall layer is just incredibly helpful. So that concludes our major general enhancement. Now I'd like to dive into some inspection enhancements. There's been a number of different things that we've done for inspection that we're pretty excited about. So the major one for this year is masking. We have dramatically improved our masking capability and introduced two new functions that really simplify masking for us. So I'm just going to pop into this scan here, and I'm going to close out the navigator for this because I don't think we need it. So we're just going to pretend that we're inspecting this layer, right? And I know a lot of you guys are inspecting either stencils or LTCC or other different applications. We'll just go ahead and do this as a general demonstration. But you can see I've got some blue raster on the left, some blue scanned image, and blue over here, sort of in the middle on the right, that if I do an inspection, these are going to just light up with error crosses, right? And historically, what we would do is we'd say, okay, well, inspect in window, do that, and let's go ahead and inspect in window. We have 4 mils. And we'd run that inspection, and we'd have to delete or ignore these error crosses. But we have a couple of different options for us. So the first option, and this is just the quick and dirty mask, but it is really effective. The first option is I can now go to Inspection, Error Crosses, delete error crosses outside Gerber. What this does is this uses our Gerber inspection file as sort of an inverted mask. So what I can do is I can run this function and it's going to ask me for a threshold. And whatever I put, it will delete error crosses greater than that distance away from the Gerber. So for instance, if I put a threshold of, let's say, and again, the units is mils because that's what my units is here. Let's put a threshold of 20 mils, okay? Hit OK. And you saw immediately that it deleted those error crosses. Now let me help you to visualize what actually happened. I can come down here to my second layer, and I can open up layer 97. I believe it is raster. There we go, layer 97 raster. Now that is the mask that it created, and it automatically did that based on the threshold that I entered. So if I zoom in, and let's turn off the current layer, and you can just see the mask. So this is the mask that it created, and basically any error cross that was in the red area got eliminated. So here's the Gerber, and that red is the mask. And so now you can see how this function works and why it's a really powerful function, because generally speaking, especially in like LTCC type applications, you're not super worried about additional conductor here. That's okay. That's not going to cause problems. And so having the ability to just define a quick mask based on the inspection Gerber and a threshold is going to make things very easy. Now, just to show you guys how that works again, let's run that function again and just use a much bigger threshold. So outside Gerber, and instead of 20, let's do 100. Okay. Let's bring up that mask. So now you can see that mask changed again, right? And even with the 100 mil, I still would have inspected most of these areas except for a couple in here, but I still would have gotten rid of the error crosses here. So, that is a really simple way to use masking. It doesn't require any Gerber editing, nothing. It's just an additional function you can run. And remember, you can program keyboard macros. So you can use a hotkey that both runs the inspection, and then as soon as the inspection completes, we'll run that mask function automatically. So all your operator needs to do is hit a hotkey and then enter the threshold. So if you don't remember how to do that, contact us at support@scancad.com, and we can go through how to actually create those macros. Again, any number of functions can be strung together within this graphics environment to really automate the workflow for your operators. So that's our simple mask. Now let's say that doesn't quite work. For whatever reason, I'm going to turn that off real quick. So for whatever reason, the geometries that you have, let's say you really do want to be inspecting, most of these areas in here in between the traces, but you want to specifically mask out this area and this area on the side, so that delete error crosses under or outside of Gerber is not going to work for you. We have an additional function called delete error crosses under mask. And what it's going to do is it's going to use a specific decode on your active layer. So we're going to dive in a separate masking video. We'll talk about how to create the mask. Very, very easy. But basically what you're going to do is on your inspection layer with your inspection Gerber data, you are going to create shapes made out of a specific Gerber shape, Gerber aperture. And all those shapes will be masked. And again, we'll cover that in a separate video. Very, very easy to do. But basically what that allows me to do is I have my inspection Gerber and my mask Gerber all on the same layer. So all I need to do is import one Gerber layer, just like normal, perform my inspection, just like normal. So let's do that. We'll perform our inspection for mils. Okay, cool. So now you can see I've got a bunch of error crosses. So now what I can do is, again, instead of going delete error crosses outside Gerber, I'm going to delete them under the mask. And what it'll do is it will delete all the error crosses under the mask, and then it's going to turn my mask red so I know what was deleted. Again, that's good feedback, just to make sure your operator always knows what's being deleted and that that mask is correct. So, and then that's it. So again, you can have any geometry you want, right? You can, draw whatever you want out of that D code. It's just got to be a specific Gerber D code. Just like I have a 60 mil circle. If I look at the D code we're talking about, it's 1031. It's this guy. That's a 10 mil circle, and I can change that as needed. So that is a very powerful tool. We're excited for you guys to start playing with it, giving us feedback on the user interface. Again, once you've created your Gerber file that has both the inspection areas and the mask areas, all you need to do is do File, Export, kick out a Gerber 274X file, and then you can re-import this for future inspections, and that masking will always work because that D code will carry through. So that is our really major enhancement for inspection this year. Again, that's been on the list for a long time. We're excited to share that with you. We've got a couple smaller ones. One of them is that it used to be rather painful to change the units when you kick out a report. So if you kick out a report, let's do that. Okay. All right, so the units, specifically whether things are in inches or millimeters, you have to go into a software file and make that change. Now, we make that change based on this button right here. So if you're running your coordinates in millimeters down here, and again, you always want to be consistent probably, but the one that will make the change is this guy. If you're running in millimeters and then you create your report, let's go ahead and overwrite it. Then all the inspection data will be in millimeters instead of inches. So again, small enhancement, but a nice usability, convenience enhancement. Next one to talk about is we now have a way to put your color separation file in right when you're scanning. So when you are scanning something new, new inspection, you can check scan image like you normally do, select your resolution, select your image type, whether black and white or whatever, your lighting. And then there is this run color separation option. If you check that, you need to browse for the color separation file that you want to use, and it will apply that. Obviously, this only counts for gray and color. But if you are doing gray or color inspections where you're using a color separation file, check that, locate that CLG file in the browse menu, and then select your Gerber that you're going to be importing, and then all of that will be done. So by the time the scan is completed, your Gerber's imported, your scan's done, and your color separation's been made. So all your operator needs to do is align and inspect, and then of course apply that new masking feature. Last thing we want to cover in the inspection area is if you guys are using the advanced scan again same part or scan and inspect same part functions, those are now automatically going to increment up to a new layer every time you run them. So what this means is, you inspect a stencil and then you run scan again same part on a new stencil. It's going to go to layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, and so on. It'll do that all the way up to layer 96, at which point if you try to do it again, it'll tell you that it's going to overwrite everything. And it'll ask you if you want to proceed. You have the option to say no. If you'd like to make a backup of that entire job, that gives you a backup of all of the different items that you've inspected with either one of these two functions. You can just do a save as, and then when you're ready to go, again, hit this function on that old job. It's going to ask you if you overwrite, and then you say yes, and it will just start again at layer 2 and keep on going. So that's been modified to give you the capability just to keep backups and manage that a little bit more easily. And again, you only need to do a save as after you've done that 96 times, right? So we have all the way up to 96, then you just do a save as and then restart. So that covers our major inspection items. Let's take a second and dive into our reverse engineering items. A couple things this year. Let's pop in here. So the first thing is just a simple one, but when you're working in assembly, you have a display button on your status line. So what that does is that allows you to toggle between the different component display modes for your assembly mode. So, again, we can come in here and I can just toggle if I want to display with window, if I want to display gray, or if I want to actually hide things altogether. So that is now available. And then I'm not sure if we covered this previously or not. You can display the reference ID on your cursor. So a really nice thing to do here is Let me actually bring up my second color image. Okay. If you press this button and then you snap to a component using the numpad /, it will show you what the reference ID is. So that's nice if you're doing QC, quality check. So I want to go through a new quality check process because I think that this is super helpful and makes quality checking just a lot of components a lot easier when you're doing your assembly file QC. And there's just a couple steps. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure we have our ref ID on cursor. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here to our assembly file. And then we're going to sort by theta. So what this allows us to do is we have now sorted all the components by their rotation. And I'll show you why that's super helpful in a second. Next, we're going to come to this jump button. And that jumps to a component sequence number. So we'll jump to component number 1 right at the top of the list. Okay. And then you can see it jumps to CR3. So the rotation is 0 because everything here is 0. You can see that all the first components are 0. And the reference ID is right there on my cursor. So all I really need to check is the rotation of the component. Does that look like 0? And is the ref ID matching? Yep. And then I hit N for next. And, easy to match CR6 with CR6. Rotation's the same. And for next, CR4. You can see that this goes really fast because they're all the same theta. They're all the same angle. So I don't need to keep looking down here and cross-referencing that. I know that they're all the same because I sorted them that way. So all I really need to do is check the component ref ID, which is right next to the silk screen. Very easy for me to tell. And then when I get to one that changes, right, the rotation or a different one, I could check theta here, make sure that's right. And then when I get to one that changes, okay, now we're into 90s. And so I know the next several are 90s, and I need to make sure that these are correctly rotated. So that just makes assembly QC so much easier, again, especially when you're dealing with thousands of components. It's a lot easier to deal with. So we've got that. One other thing we've got is we have the ability to crop a job now. So, for instance, if I'm only interested in a specific area, I can actually draw a window around it. Go to Window, Crop All Layers, and let's do it. It's not going to process the assembly file, but it'll do everything else. We'll call this Sample Board Cropped. Okay for all. So it's going to do that for all layers. So now let's go look at that. Cropped. Okay. See, I've got my color images, my Gerber, my drills, and so on. So that's all in there. So we've got our cropping. And then lastly, we've revamped our export to make things just a lot easier. So first we'll go to File, Export, and let's do the big one that we export all the time, right, Gerber. Choose our format, 274X current format, and choose our name. That's all fine. And now you can see we have got a list of all of the Gerber layers in this job. So I can select manually which ones I want. I can hit select all. I can hit select all with description. So if I have a bunch of layers without description, it won't select those. I can select only the current layer, and I can deselect all. So this allows you to batch export a number of layers at once and do it very easily. Additionally, the same thing works for DXF. Okay, and let's go look at monochrome raster. See, same thing for monochrome raster. And the color raster, we have the same thing as well. So all of the different major file outputs from the system have this batch export. Some of the exceptions are drill. Drill, you still need to be on the drill layer to export that. And component centroid, there's only the one assembly file in any case, so that hasn't been changed. So those are the major new functions. Again, keep an eye out for some new videos. Specifically, we're going to create a new masking video that covers that in detail. And as always, we hope you enjoy the release. If you do have any feedback, please come into the help menu, click feedback, And give us your feedback. We always want to hear from you. You can also email us at support@scancad.com, and we're just here to support you, and we're happy you're part of our extended ScanCAD family. Thank you very much for watching.